Are you ready for this? The stage awaits its true patron.
My daughter-in-law was sitting in my favorite seat when I returned to the ballroom. Lauren crossed her legs, looked up at me, and smirked. "The front row is for people who still have a future to build," she said. My handbag had been moved to a table beside the kitchen doors. But what hurt most was seeing my son Michael sitting beside her in silence. I asked him to look at me. He couldn't, so I turned toward the exit, determined not to let them watch me cry. Before I reached the doors, the gala host hurried across the room and took my arm. "Mrs. Stewart," she said loudly, "we've been looking everywhere for you. The main presentation cannot begin without you." Then she escorted me toward the stage, and Lauren's smile disappeared. Before I tell you what happened next, please like this video and subscribe if you believe no woman should become invisible simply because she has grown older. Tell me in the comments how Lauren's words made you feel, and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. My name is Kelly Stewart. I was 68 years old when my daughter-in-law took my seat and smiled as if she had finally put me in my place. But the truth was, Lauren had been trying to push me out of my own family for years. I lived alone in a small brick house in Oak Park, Illinois. It was not fashionable, but it was warm. The kitchen cabinets were still the pale cream color my husband Richard had painted 20 years earlier. The hardwood floors creaked near the stairs. The lilac bushes outside the front window bloomed every spring, even after the harshest Chicago winters. That house held my whole life. Richard and I had bought it when Michael was 3 years old. We did not have much money then. Richard worked as an accountant for a manufacturing company downtown, and I worked part-time at the local public library while finishing my degree. We counted every dollar. We packed lunches instead of eating out. We repaired old furniture instead of replacing it. When Michael wanted a bicycle, Richard bought a rusted one at a yard sale and spent 3 weekends restoring it. Michael loved that bicycle more than anything we could have bought new. "That's because your father put his heart into it," I once told him. Michael had smiled and said, "Then I'm never getting rid of it." He was 8 years old then. Back then, I believed my son understood the difference between price and value. Richard and I raised Michael to be kind, responsible, and honest. At least we tried. He was not a perfect child, but he had a good heart. When he was 11, he came home with a torn shirt and a bruised cheek. I nearly panicked. "What happened to you?" I asked. Michael looked at the floor. "A bigger kid was making fun of a girl in my class," he said. "He kept calling her stupid because she had trouble reading. And you fought him. I told him to stop. And then he pushed me." I waited. Michael lifted his chin. So I pushed him back. Richard gave him a serious lecture about fighting, but later that night after Michael went to bed, he looked at me and smiled. "He stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for herself," Richard said. That matters. I never forgot those words. Years later, when Michael sat beside Lauren and refused to defend me, I remembered that bruised little boy. I wondered where he had gone. Richard was the steady center of our family. He was quiet, patient, and dependable. He never needed to dominate a room. People trusted him because he listened before he spoke. He helped neighbors with their taxes, volunteered at food drives, and served on the financial committee of several local charities. He believed money revealed character. "It doesn't make people good or bad," he once told me. "It just gives them more ways to show what they already are." I did not understand how important those words would become. 6 years before the gala, Richard was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The doctors were careful with their language, but I knew the truth the moment I saw their faces. Richard knew too. On the drive home, he reached across the center console and took my hand. "Well, face it together," he said. We did. For 14 months, our lives revolved around appointments, medications, test results, and waiting rooms. I learned how to organize pill bottles, clean medical equipment, and smile when I wanted to scream. Michael visited often at first. He brought groceries. He drove Richard to chemotherapy when I was too exhausted. He sat beside his father and talked about baseball work and ordinary things. Richard appreciated that. "Don't let my illness become your whole life," he told Michael. "Keep moving forward." Michael did. Maybe too far. Lauren entered our lives during Richard's final months. Michael introduced her at a Sunday dinner. She arrived wearing a fitted white coat and carrying a bottle of wine that cost more than our weekly grocery budget. She was beautiful, polished, and confident. She worked in luxury real estate in downtown Chicago and knew how to make every sentence sound important. "I specialize in high-value clients," she told us, "people who expect a certain standard." Richard smiled politely. "And what standard is that?" he asked. Lauren laughed as if he had made a joke. "The best," she said. At the time, I thought she was simply ambitious. I wanted to like her because Michael loved her. After Richard died, Lauren was attentive for several weeks. She brought flowers. She sent messages. She told me I should call if I needed anything. I believed she meant it. Michael called every evening during that first month. "Are you eating?" he would ask. "Yes." "Are you sleeping?" "Not much. I can come over. You have work. You're more important." Those words kept me going. But after he married Lauren, the calls became less frequent. Every evening became twice a week. Twice a week became Sunday afternoons. Then Sunday afternoons became whenever Lauren did not already have plans. I told myself this was normal. Children grew up. They built their own lives. A mother had no right to demand every spare moment. Still, there was a difference between giving your child freedom and watching him slowly close the door. Lauren rarely insulted me directly in front of Michael. She was too clever for that. Instead, she made small comments that could be dismissed as jokes. The first time she visited my house after the wedding, she looked around the living room and said, "This place has so much potential." I smiled. "I've always liked it as it is." "Oh, of course," she said. "Some people are comfortable with familiar things." Her tone made comfortable sound like a failure. At dinner, she examined my serving dishes. "These are vintage," she said. "They belonged to Richard's mother." Lauren turned one over and looked at the bottom. "They might actually be worth something. They are worth something to me?" She gave me a patient smile. I meant financially. That was Lauren. She placed a price tag on everything. My home, my clothes, my furniture, even my memories. Once I wore a wool coat Richard had bought me for our 30th anniversary. Lauren touched the sleeve and said, "You know, there are wonderful consignment shops for women your age." I looked at her. "What is wrong with this coat?" "Nothing. It's just very loyal." Michael laughed. I did not. Later, when I asked him why Lauren spoke to me that way, he sighed. "Mom, she doesn't mean anything by it. She makes me feel small. She's direct. She is disrespectful." Michael rubbed his forehead. "Can we not turn every comment into a problem?" That sentence stayed with me. Not because it was cruel, because it was convenient. Every time Lauren crossed a line, Michael moved the line. When she criticized my house, he called her practical. When she interrupted me, he called her energetic. When she ignored my birthday dinner because of a client meeting, he called her hardworking. And when she suggested I should sell my home and move into a senior community, he called her concerned. I began to wonder whether Michael truly could not see what was happening, or whether seeing it would force him to make a choice. I kept trying. I invited Lauren to lunch. I asked about her work. I gave her a pearl bracelet that had belonged to my mother. She accepted it without hesitation. This would look beautiful with one of my evening dresses, she said. She never asked what it meant to me. That should have told me everything. Still, I wanted peace. I wanted my son in my life. So I swallowed my hurt and told myself Lauren would soften with time. She did not. She became bolder, and Michael became quieter. By the night of the gala, Lauren no longer saw me as Michael's mother. She saw me as an old woman standing between her and something she believed she deserved. What she did not understand was that Richard had taught me to recognize the difference between love and surrender. And after 6 years of being dismissed, I was finally reaching the point where I could no longer pretend they were the same thing. The invitation arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. I recognized the envelope before I even picked it up. Cream-colored paper, dark blue lettering, the Bright Futures Foundation. For a moment, I simply stood by the front door, holding it against my chest. Some letters bring excitement, some bring fear. This one always brought memories. I carried it into the kitchen, made myself a cup of tea, and sat in Richard's favorite chair. The chair still faced the backyard. It had been 6 years since he passed away, but I had never moved it. I opened the envelope carefully. Mrs. Kelly Stewart, the Board of Directors cordially invites you to attend the annual Bright Futures Foundation Gala. I smiled before I finished reading. Richard would have smiled too. People often assumed the gala was just another elegant charity dinner where wealthy people congratulated one another. They were wrong. Bright Futures had changed hundreds of lives, maybe thousands. Richard and I had been there almost from the beginning. More than 20 years earlier, one of Richard's friends introduced us to a small nonprofit that wanted to help women return to college after life interrupted their education. Back then, the foundation barely occupied 2 rented offices above an old bookstore. They had dreams, very little money, and a mountain of paperwork. Richard volunteered to organize their financial records. "I'll help for a few weeks," he told me. Those few weeks became 20 years. I started helping shortly afterward. Not because I knew anything about fundraising, because I loved books. Many applicants had been out of school for decades. They were terrified of writing essays again. Some hadn't opened a textbook since their 20s. I sat with them. I read drafts. I corrected grammar. Sometimes I simply listened while they cried. One woman told me she had left nursing school after her husband was paralyzed in a construction accident. Another had escaped an abusive marriage with 3 children. Another had spent 25 years caring for aging parents. Every story reminded me that life rarely follows the plans we make at 20. Richard always said something that stayed with me. "People don't need pity," he would say. "They need someone to believe tomorrow can still be different." That became the heart of the foundation. Year after year, we watched women graduate: teachers, nurses, counselors, business owners. Some returned to thank us years later with children standing proudly beside them. Those moments meant more to Richard than any promotion he ever received. After he died, I considered skipping the gala. Everything reminded me of him: the ballroom, the music, the speeches, even the table linens. But Patricia Reynolds called me personally. "Richard would never forgive you if you disappeared," she said. I laughed through my tears. So I went. The first year without Richard was the hardest. When I entered the ballroom, I automatically reached for his hand. There was no hand to find, only empty air. I nearly turned around and walked out. Then Patricia quietly guided me to my seat. The same aisle seat. Front row, left side. Richard had always chosen it because of my hip. Years ago, I slipped on ice while carrying library books into my car. The injury healed, but arthritis settled into the joint. Long walks and tight rows of chairs became painful. Richard noticed long before I admitted it. From then on, he always requested the aisle seat. "You shouldn't have to climb over strangers," he told me. "I don't mind." "I do." That was Richard. He solved problems before I even mentioned them. After his death, Patricia kept reserving that same seat every year, not because anyone had to, because everyone understood what it meant. It wasn't just a chair, it was the last place where I still felt Richard beside me. Most people never knew. They simply saw an elderly widow sitting quietly in the front row. That was fine with me. Some memories are too precious to explain. I finished reading the invitation and placed it beside my teacup. Then my phone rang. It was Michael. "Morning, Mom." "Good morning. What are you doing today?" "I just received my gala invitation." There was a short pause. "Oh, right, that charity dinner." His voice sounded almost distracted. "I forgot it was coming up. You've remembered every other year?" "I've been busy." I smiled sadly. We all get busy. Another silence. Then he asked, "Are you still going?" "Of course." "I'm glad." His answer felt automatic, like someone checking an item off a list. Then I heard Lauren speaking somewhere in the background. "What gala?" Michael lowered his voice, but not enough. "My mom's charity thing." "A fancy event, I guess. Who goes?" I heard dishes clinking. Michael answered casually. "Business people, foundation board members, donors." Lauren's tone changed immediately. "Real donors? Probably. How big is this event?" I sat quietly. Neither of them realized I could hear every word. Michael laughed. "I don't know. A few hundred people." Lauren spoke faster now. "Why have you never taken me?" "It never came up." "It should have." I looked down at the invitation. Something about her sudden interest made me uneasy. Michael came back to the phone. "Sorry about that." "No problem." He hesitated. "Would you mind if Lauren and I came with you this year?" The question surprised me. Lauren had ignored every invitation for 5 years. She always had another event, another client, another vacation, another excuse. Now she wanted to attend. "You're welcome to come," I answered. "Great. I'll reserve 2 more places." "Thanks, Mom." Before hanging up, he added something that sounded almost embarrassed. "Lauren thinks it could be good networking." There it was. Networking. Not supporting scholarships. Not honoring Richard. Not seeing old family friends. Networking. After the call ended, I remained at the kitchen table for a long time. Richard would have understood why that word bothered me. To him, people were never stepping stones. They were never opportunities. They were human beings. That afternoon, I drove to the foundation office to confirm my attendance. Patricia greeted me with a warm hug. "I've been waiting for you." "I wouldn't miss it." "I know." She smiled in a way that made me curious. "We still have a lot to prepare. I hope everything is on schedule." "It is." She lowered her voice. "And don't worry. The board has kept every promise." I nodded. "I appreciate that. We've told no one. Not even your son. Especially not my son." She squeezed my hand. "It'll stay that way." I trusted Patricia completely. For nearly 2 years, she, the board, and I had been working on something that would finally be revealed at this year's gala. Only 7 people knew the full truth. Michael wasn't one of them. Lauren certainly wasn't. I wanted it that way. Not because I wished to deceive my son, because Richard and I had always believed generosity meant giving without expecting applause. If Michael learned the truth beforehand, Lauren would too. And I no longer trusted her motives. As I prepared to leave, Patricia walked me to the parking lot. "One more thing," she said. "Yes, please arrive early on the night of the gala." "I will. We'll need you before the guests are seated." I smiled. "I understand." She looked directly into my eyes. "Kelly." "Yes." "Richard would be incredibly proud of you." I felt tears forming. So would I. Driving home, I held the steering wheel tighter than usual. I had no idea that the invitation lying on my passenger seat would become the beginning of the most painful and ultimately the most important night of my life. Because while I was thinking about honoring Richard's legacy, Lauren Stewart was already thinking about how she could use it. The week after Michael called about the gala, Lauren suddenly became interested in my life. Not me. My life. There was a difference. She called on Wednesday afternoon while I was pruning the roses Richard had planted years earlier. "Hi, Kelly," she said brightly. She almost never called me by myself. "Hello, Lauren. I hope I'm not bothering you." "Not at all. I've been thinking about the gala." "I imagined you had." She laughed. "I just want to make sure I don't embarrass myself." That sounded reasonable, at least at first. "What would you like to know?" I asked. "Who usually attends?" I mentioned retired judges, business owners, educators, physicians, and longtime supporters of the foundation. She interrupted me. "Any real estate developers?" "A few." "What about investment firms?" "I believe so." "Private equity?" "I've never asked." Lauren became quieter. "What should I wear?" "Whatever makes you comfortable." She laughed again. "Comfortable isn't really the goal." That sentence stayed with me long after we hung up. For Lauren, appearances always came before comfort, before kindness, before honesty. 3 days later, she came to my house with Michael. I had baked an apple pie because Michael used to love it. The smell filled the kitchen before they even walked inside. Michael hugged me. Lauren kissed the air beside my cheek. "This house always smells like cinnamon," she said. "I like it. It reminds me of antique stores." I smiled politely. "I'll take that as a compliment." She smiled back. "I meant it as one." I wasn't entirely convinced. After lunch, Lauren wandered through the living room while Michael helped me carry dishes into the kitchen. A few minutes later, I heard her call my name. "Kelly, I'm coming." She stood beside the china cabinet. In her hand was a small velvet jewelry box. My heart skipped. Inside was my mother's sapphire brooch. Richard had given it back to me on our first wedding anniversary after secretly having the clasp repaired. It wasn't expensive. It was priceless to me. Lauren held it against her dress. "This is beautiful." "It belonged to my mother." "I know." She smiled. "It would match my navy gown perfectly." I reached for the box. "I'm glad you like it." Instead of handing it back, she kept holding it. "I was wondering if I could borrow it for the gala." I hesitated. Very few people had ever worn that brooch. Richard loved seeing it on me. Every year at the gala, I pinned it near my left shoulder. It had become my quiet tradition. Lauren watched my face carefully. "I'll be extremely careful." Before I answered, Michael walked into the room. "What are you two looking at?" Lauren turned toward him. "Your mom has this gorgeous vintage brooch." Michael smiled. "It belonged to Grandma, didn't it?" "Yes." Lauren slipped the brooch back into the box. I think it deserves another night in the spotlight. Something about those words made me uncomfortable. Not because she admired it, because she spoke about it like a designer accessory, not a family memory. I finally nodded. You may borrow it. Her smile widened instantly. Thank you. I'll need it back afterward. Of course. The answer came too quickly. Before leaving, Lauren looked me up and down. What are you planning to wear? My navy dress. The one you've worn before? Yes. She tilted her head. What? I just thought maybe something newer? I like that dress. I'm sure you do. She paused. But this is a high-profile event. I know. You don't want people thinking you're trying too hard. I blinked. I wasn't aware that wearing my favorite dress meant trying too hard. Lauren laughed softly. I just meant elegant simplicity suits women at your stage of life. Women at your stage of life. I had heard variations of that phrase before. Every time she said it, I felt another small piece of myself disappear. Michael cleared his throat. Lauren. What? Leave Mom alone. She raised both hands dramatically. I was trying to help. After they left, I carried the empty pie plate into the kitchen. I stared at the spot where the brooch usually rested. The cabinet looked strangely empty. For the first time, lending it felt like a mistake. The following Monday, I received a call from an old friend named Eleanor. She had served on several nonprofit committees with Richard years ago. Kelly, she said, I ran into your daughter-in-law. Oh, she seems ambitious. I laughed quietly. That's one word for it. Eleanor hesitated. I thought you should know something. What happened? Lauren introduced herself as the woman continuing Richard Stewart's charitable legacy. My smile disappeared. What exactly did she say? She told several people your family would be expanding its community work. I frowned. That's interesting. There was something else. I waited. She implied she was helping make financial decisions for the Stewart family. I thanked Eleanor for calling. After hanging up, I remained still for several minutes. Lauren wasn't simply attending the gala anymore. She was building a story where she stood at the center of Richard's reputation. I wondered how many people already believed it. That afternoon, my phone rang again. This time, it was Patricia Reynolds. Kelly. Hello, Patricia. I wanted to confirm your arrival time. I'll be there early. Excellent. We have one rehearsal left. I'm looking forward to it. Patricia lowered her voice. The presentation has been finalized. Good. The video is finished. Wonderful. The board approved every detail. I closed my eyes. Richard would have loved hearing that. Thank you, I whispered. There is one more thing. Yes. We've added a special introduction. I trust you. I hope you'll forgive me. I laughed. Now you've made me nervous. You'll understand that night. I smiled. I probably will. Before ending the call, Patricia said something unexpected. You've waited a long time for this moment. I have. And you've never once asked for recognition. I didn't do it for recognition. I know. That's why you deserve it. We ended the call. I had barely placed the phone on the counter when I heard my front door open. Michael stepped inside. Mom, I'm in the kitchen. He looked tired. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes. You okay? I asked. Work's been stressful. I poured him coffee. We sat together for several minutes without speaking. Finally, he asked, Patricia called. Yes. What did she want? Just gala preparations. He nodded slowly. Lauren's voice suddenly echoed from the front hallway. Michael, I'm back here. She walked into the kitchen carrying shopping bags. I didn't realize you were on the phone with Patricia. She smiled. I caught the end of it. Oh, you mentioned a presentation. I remained calm. Yes. Lauren leaned against the counter. Is someone famous receiving an award? You'll find out soon. She grinned. You always know how to keep a secret. I gave my word. Lauren exchanged a quick glance with Michael. I love surprises. I love surprises. I wasn't sure that was true. I suspected Lauren loved information. Information was power. And for the first time in years, she didn't have all of it. That seemed to bother her. As they prepared to leave, Lauren stopped at the front door. Oh, Kelly. Yes? Don't forget my brooch. I smiled politely. You mean my mother's brooch? For a split second, something flashed across her face. Embarrassment, annoyance, maybe both. Then she smiled again. Right. Your mother's brooch. Watching her walk towards the driveway, I felt a strange heaviness settle over me. Richard had always trusted people until they proved otherwise. I had tried to live the same way, but every conversation with Lauren left me asking the same question. Was she interested in joining our family? Or was she only interested in inheriting the image of it? I didn't know then that she had already decided the Stewart name belonged to her. And at the gala, she was about to make that belief painfully clear. The morning of the gala arrived with clear skies and cool autumn air. I woke before sunrise. Not because I was excited, because I had barely slept. Every year, the gala reminded me of Richard. This year felt different. There was a strange weight in my chest that I couldn't explain. I made coffee and stood by the kitchen window. The backyard looked exactly as Richard had left it. The maple tree was beginning to turn gold. The bird feeder still hung from the old oak branch. For a few quiet minutes, I imagined he was upstairs getting dressed, humming softly, like he always did before important events. Then, reality settled over me. I was alone. I carried my coffee upstairs and opened the closet. My navy evening dress hung exactly where I had placed it after last year's gala. It wasn't the newest dress I owned. It wasn't the most expensive, but it was Richard's favorite. You always look elegant in blue, he used to say. It matches your eyes. I smiled at the memory. Some compliments never grow old. I carefully slipped into the dress. The fabric still fit comfortably, not perfectly. Age changes every body. But I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I wanted to feel like myself. I brushed my silver hair slowly before fastening my pearl earrings. Richard had given them to me on our 25th wedding anniversary. Simple, classic, timeless, just like him. When I reached for my mother's sapphire brooch, my fingers stopped. The jewelry box was empty. Of course, Lauren had borrowed it. For a moment, I regretted saying yes. The dress suddenly felt unfinished. Not because the brooch was valuable, because every year Richard pinned it onto my shoulder himself. He always smiled afterward. There, he'd whisper. Now you're ready. I closed the empty box and placed it back inside the drawer. Today, I would have to be ready on my own. Around noon, my phone buzzed. Lauren. Hi, Kelly. Hello? We're leaving around 5. I know. We thought it would be easier if you drove separately. I frowned. Separately. Michael and I need to arrive a little earlier. For what? There will probably be photographers. She said it casually. As a couple, we should make the most of it. I remained silent. She continued. Besides, you'll probably want your own schedule. That wasn't the real reason. We both knew it. She didn't want to arrive with an older woman who might distract from the image she wanted to present. Michael finally spoke. Mom, I'm here. Is that okay? His voice sounded uncertain. I could almost hear him hoping I would solve the problem for him. Of course, I answered quietly. I can drive myself. Thanks, Mom. Lauren immediately added, Great, we'll see you there. The call ended. No one asked whether driving at night was difficult for me. No one offered to help me into the hotel. No one asked how my hip was feeling. I looked around the empty kitchen. 6 years earlier, Michael would never have imagined letting me arrive alone. Now, it seemed completely normal. I left home just after 4. Traffic into downtown Chicago was heavier than usual. The closer I came to the hotel, the more luxury cars surrounded me. Black SUVs, limousines, luxury sedans. Richard used to joke that charity galas often had the most expensive parking lots in the city. He wasn't wrong. When I reached the hotel entrance, attendants directed vehicles toward the valet line. As I stepped out of my car, I noticed a familiar voice. Lauren. She had arrived only minutes before me. She wasn't walking toward the entrance. She was standing near a photographer. Michael stood beside her with an uncomfortable smile. Lauren adjusted his tie. No, stand closer. Michael obeyed. The photographer raised his camera. Lauren turned slightly so her profile faced the lights. I watched quietly from several yards away. She looked completely different from the woman who visited my house. Confident, poised, perfectly rehearsed. A reporter approached them. Lauren smiled immediately. I'm Lauren Stewart. The reporter nodded politely. And you are? I'm married to Michael Stewart. She gently touched Michael's arm. My late father-in-law, Richard Stewart, devoted many years to this foundation. I felt my stomach tighten. Lauren continued speaking as though she had known Richard for decades. Our family has always believed in giving back. Our family? Richard would have found that sentence ironic. She had attended exactly 0 foundation events, not one, yet she spoke as if she represented everything Richard believed. Michael noticed me standing nearby. His smile faded. He walked over. Mom, you both look nice. So do you. He glanced toward Lauren. I'll be with you in a minute. It's fine. No, really. Before he could continue, Lauren called his name. Michael. I'm coming. He looked at me apologetically. I'll find you inside. I nodded. He hurried back. I watched Lauren straighten his jacket before another photographer took several more pictures. She never once looked toward me. I entered the hotel alone. Inside the grand lobby, everything felt familiar. Crystal chandeliers, soft piano music, fresh flowers everywhere. It was beautiful and strangely comforting. A young woman wearing a Bright Futures Foundation name badge approached me with a warm smile. Mrs. Stewart. Yes? I'm Emily Harper. We spoke on the phone last month. I remembered immediately. Emily coordinated volunteers for the scholarship program. It's wonderful to see you, she said. You too. She leaned closer. Everything is ready. I smiled. I'm glad. We'll need you upstairs a little earlier than planned. I'll be there. Emily lowered her voice. The board reviewed the final presentation this morning, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. I laughed softly. I hope that's a good sign. It definitely is. She glanced toward the ballroom entrance. We've all been waiting for tonight. Before I could answer, Lauren appeared behind me. "Oh, there you are." Emily smiled politely. "Good evening." Lauren returned the smile. "Hi." Emily looked back at me. "I'll see you shortly." As she walked away, Lauren watched her carefully. "What was that about?" "Just foundation business." Lauren tilted her head. "She said everything is ready." "Yes." "For what?" "You'll find out." Lauren laughed. "Another secret." "I suppose so." She slipped her hand through Michael's arm. "I can't wait to meet whoever the mystery donor is." I looked at her. "What makes you think there's a mystery donor?" She smiled confidently. "I know how these events work. The board always saves the biggest announcement for the end." She wasn't wrong, just not for the reason she imagined. Lauren looked around the lobby. So many important people. She whispered the words almost to herself. Then she spotted a man wearing a custom-tailored tuxedo. "I think that's Charles Benton." "I don't know." "He's one of the biggest developers in Chicago." Without another word, she hurried toward him, pulling Michael behind her. I watched my son disappear into the crowd again. A quiet sadness settled over me. Michael hadn't become cruel. That almost made it worse. He had simply become someone who followed the loudest voice in the room. Years ago, that voice had been his father's. Now, it belonged to Lauren. A few minutes later, I checked my watch. I still had time before Patricia expected me upstairs. I took one last deep breath. Soon, everything would change. Lauren thought tonight was about making connections, about status, about wealthy donors, about climbing another step higher. She had no idea she was walking straight toward the biggest mistake of her life. And in less than an hour, she would decide that the seat Richard had reserved for me for over 20 years belonged to her. The ballroom doors opened at 6 sharp. I stepped inside, slowly letting my eyes adjust to the soft, golden lighting. For a moment, everything felt exactly the same. Round tables dressed in white linen, crystal glasses catching the light, a low hum of conversation filling the air. And at the front, my seat, left side, aisle, front row, exactly where it had always been. A small card rested on the chair. Mrs. Kelly Stewart. I smiled. For a brief second, I felt something close to peace. Richard's presence lingered there, just like every year. I walked toward the table, greeting familiar faces along the way. "Kelly, you look wonderful. Thank you." "It's good to see you." "It's good to be here." These were people who remembered Richard. People who remembered me. Not as someone's mother. Not as someone's obligation. But as myself. I placed my purse gently on the chair and ran my fingers along the backrest. Then I heard Lauren's voice behind me. "Michael, this is perfect." I turned slowly. Lauren stood a few feet away, scanning the front tables. Her eyes moved quickly, calculating, measuring, evaluating. Michael stood beside her, looking slightly uncomfortable. "This is where the important people sit," she said. Michael nodded weakly. "I guess so." Lauren stepped closer. "This is exactly where we need to be." My chest tightened. Something about her tone felt final, like she had already made a decision. I spoke calmly. "This is my seat." Lauren looked at me, then at the card, then back at me. Her expression didn't change. "Oh," she said lightly, "I thought seating might be flexible." "It isn't." She smiled. "Come on, Kelly. There are plenty of seats. This one was reserved. For you, yes." She glanced around again. "Honestly, this section makes more sense for us." "For us?" Michael shifted beside her. "Lauren." "What?" She lowered her voice slightly. This is where people connect. I held her gaze. And I have been coming here for over 20 years. Lauren's smile returned. Yes, but things change. That sentence landed harder than she intended, or maybe exactly as she intended. Michael stepped forward. Mom, maybe we can just... No, I said quietly. He stopped. Lauren crossed her arms. You're making this awkward. I didn't move anything, not yet. There it was, the warning. I took a slow breath. I'll sit here. Lauren's eyes flickered. Then she leaned closer. Let's not make a scene. I looked at her. I'm not the one creating it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Lauren turned to a passing server. Excuse me? The young man stopped. Yes, Mom. Could you move these place cards? I stepped forward immediately. No? The server hesitated. Sorry, Lauren pointed. We need to sit here. The server looked confused. These seats are assigned? Lauren cut him off. It's fine. It isn't, I said. The tension between us sharpened instantly. Guests nearby began to glance in our direction. Lauren lowered her voice again. You're embarrassing yourself. No. I'm protecting what belongs to me. Michael stepped between us. Mom, please. His voice was quiet, almost pleading. I looked at him. Do you know why this seat matters? He hesitated. Because it's in the front. I felt something break inside me. No. I pointed gently to the chair. Your father chose this seat every year. Michael's face softened slightly. Because of your hip? Yes. And because he wanted to sit beside me where I wouldn't struggle to get in and out. Lauren sighed. That's sweet. Sweet. That was how she described 20 years of shared memories. Now it's my seat, I continued. Lauren shook her head. Kelly, you're not being practical. Practical? Yes. She gestured toward the room. This is a networking event. For you. For everyone. No, I said calmly. For you. Her eyes hardened. You're retired. The words were quiet, sharp, deliberate. You don't need this seat. There it was. The truth behind everything she had been saying. I looked at Michael. Do you agree with her? He didn't answer immediately. Lauren answered for him. He understands how things work. I waited. Michael finally spoke. Mom, maybe we can just sit together at another table. Another table, behind the kitchen, away from the stage, away from everything. You want me to move? I asked. I just don't want conflict. Conflict. That word again. Avoid it. Ignore it. Pretend it doesn't exist. I nodded slowly. I see. Lauren smiled again, sensing victory. Good. She turned to the server. You can clear this. Before he could move, I picked up my purse. I looked at the card one last time. Mrs. Kelly Stewart. For a moment, I considered staying. Standing my ground, demanding respect. But then I looked at Michael, and I saw it clearly. He wasn't going to defend me. Not tonight. Not here. Not in front of her. So I stepped back. Enjoy the seat, I said quietly. Lauren's smile widened. Thank you. Michael avoided my eyes. I'll come find you later. I nodded. I'm sure you will. I turned and walked away. Each step felt heavier than the last. The noise of the room faded behind me. I found my purse had been moved, placed at a small table near the service doors, near the kitchen, where servers passed in and out carrying trays, where no one important would sit. I picked up my bag slowly. The chair was empty. Of course it was. It had never been meant for me. that was the message Lauren wanted to send. I sat down anyway. Just for a moment, the sounds of clinking glasses and polite laughter filled the space. No one looked at me. No one asked what happened, and suddenly I felt invisible, not just ignored, erased. I pressed my hands together to stop them from shaking. I had attended this gala for more than 20 years. I had helped build it, supported it, believed in it, and now I sat near the kitchen like I didn't belong. Because my daughter-in-law decided I didn't. I closed my eyes. Richard's voice echoed in my memory. Don't let anyone convince you that your value has an expiration date. I opened my eyes again, but Richard wasn't here. Michael wasn't coming. And Lauren was laughing in my seat. I stood up. I couldn't stay. Not like this. Not where every second felt like a reminder of what I had lost. I turned toward the exit. One step, then another. I kept my head high, but I could feel the tears building. I wasn't going to cry in front of them. I wasn't going to give Lauren that satisfaction. I reached the aisle, almost to the doors. Just a few more steps, Kelly. I froze. That voice. Patricia Reynolds. I turned slowly. She was already walking toward me, concern written across her face. Why are you leaving? She asked. I tried to smile. I think I'm done for tonight. Her eyes moved past me, toward the back table, toward the empty chair near the kitchen, then toward the front, where Lauren now sat in my place. Patricia's expression changed, sharp, focused, decisive. Come with me, she said. I don't want to cause trouble. You're not. She reached for my arm. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. I hesitated. Then I let her guide me. And for the first time that night, Lauren's victory began to slip. Patricia didn't let go of my arm. Not even for a second. Come with me, she said again, more firmly this time. I don't want to interrupt anything, I replied quietly. You're not interrupting, she said. You are the reason this evening exists. Her words startled me. Even after everything we had planned, hearing it said out loud still felt overwhelming. Behind us, I could feel eyes beginning to turn. Guests were noticing. Not just Patricia. Me. Patricia. I whispered, people are watching. Good, she answered. I almost laughed. That was exactly how Richard used to speak when he had already made up his mind. She guided me back toward the center aisle. Each step felt different from the ones I had taken earlier. I had walked toward the exit, feeling invisible. Now I was being led forward, seen, recognized, and I wasn't ready for that. As we passed the back tables, I caught a glimpse of Lauren. She was still seated in my chair, still smiling, still leaning toward a man in a dark suit, speaking with effortless confidence. Michael sat beside her, nodding along. He looked up. His eyes found me immediately. Confusion crossed his face, then concern, then something else. Uncertainty. Lauren followed his gaze. Her expression didn't change at first. She assumed, like always, that whatever was happening didn't involve her, didn't threaten her, didn't matter. Patricia continued walking, straight down the center aisle, not toward the exit, toward the stage. The room slowly quieted. One conversation ended, then another. Heads turned, chairs shifted. The soft hum of polite chatter faded into something sharper. Attention. Patricia, I murmured, this isn't necessary. Yes, it is. We can talk privately. No. Her voice softened, but her grip stayed firm. You've stayed quiet long enough. I didn't answer. Because she was right. For years I had stepped back, made space. avoided conflict, told myself it wasn't worth the trouble. Tonight had almost become just another moment where I accepted less than I deserved. Almost. We reached the front of the room. The stage stood just a few feet ahead. Bright lights, a large screen behind it, rows of seats reserved for board members and key speakers. Patricia finally released my arm. Then she turned to face me fully. "Are you ready?" she asked. I took a breath. "I think so." She smiled. "You don't have to be perfect. I know. You just have to be yourself." That part felt harder. Before I could say anything else, she stepped up onto the stage. The room fell completely silent. "Good evening," she began, her voice calm and steady. "Thank you all for joining us tonight." Polite applause followed. I stood just beside the stage, half in the shadows, watching, waiting, trying to steady my breathing. Patricia continued. "As many of you know, the Bright Futures Foundation has spent over 2 decades supporting women who refuse to give up on their education." More applause. I glanced back toward the audience. Lauren was still seated, still composed, but now she was paying attention. She leaned slightly forward, listening, trying to understand where this was going. Patricia's voice shifted slightly. "This evening, we had planned to begin with a very special presentation." A pause. "But I've just realized something important." The room grew even quieter. "We cannot begin," another pause, "without one of the most important people in this room." My heart started to race. I knew what was coming, but that didn't make it easier. Patricia turned her head slightly, looking directly at me. "Kelly," she said. The sound of my name echoed across the ballroom. "Would you please join me?" A wave of murmurs spread through the crowd. Not loud, but noticeable. Confusion, curiosity, recognition from those who knew me. I stepped forward slowly. Every step felt heavier than the last. Not from pain, from emotion. As I walked up the small set of stairs, I heard whispers. "Is that Kelly Stewart? She's been coming here for years." I didn't realize neither did Lauren. I looked toward her. Her smile had faded. Completely. Her eyes were locked on me now, trying to piece everything together, trying to understand what she had missed. Michael looked even more stunned. He stood halfway up from his chair, unsure whether to stay seated or follow. I reached the stage. Patricia extended her hand. I took it. She guided me to a seat beside the other board members. Not just any seat, a place of honor. At the front, where everyone could see me clearly. The irony didn't escape me. Just minutes earlier, I had been told I didn't belong in the front row. Now I was sitting above it. Patricia turned to the microphone. "For many years," she continued, "this foundation has been supported by generous donors." She paused. "But some contributions are so meaningful that they change everything." I kept my hands folded in my lap, trying to remain calm, trying not to look at Lauren again. But I could feel her staring. Patricia gestured toward the large screen behind us. "Tonight," she said, "we would like to introduce a new initiative." The lights dimmed slightly. The screen flickered to life. An old photograph appeared. Black and white. A younger version of me standing beside Richard. We were smiling, holding a stack of books between us. The room reacted instantly. Soft murmurs. Recognition spreading. I swallowed hard. I hadn't seen that photo in years. Patricia spoke again. "More than 20 years ago, 2 people began supporting this foundation when it was nothing more than a dream." Another pause. They didn't do it for recognition. They didn't do it for status. They did it because they believed in second chances. I felt my throat tighten. Richard's voice echoed in my memory. They need someone to believe tomorrow can still be different. Patricia continued. One of those people is no longer with us. Silence. But the other. She turned toward me again. Never stopped. The room was completely still. No movement. No whispers. Just attention. Focused. Undeniable. I looked down at my hands. Then slowly back up. And for the first time that night, I saw Lauren clearly. Not confident. Not smiling. Not in control. Confused. Shaken. Realizing something she hadn't expected. The story she thought she understood was about to change. Completely. Patricia took a breath. And now she said, "It is my honor to begin the presentation that would not exist without Kelly Stewart." I closed my eyes for a brief moment, then opened them again, because this time I wasn't the woman being asked to step aside. I was the woman being asked to step forward. I stayed seated as Patricia continued speaking, but inside everything felt unsteady. Not from fear, from exposure. For years I had chosen to stay in the background. Now suddenly there was nowhere to hide. The screen behind us changed again. The black and white photo faded into a short video. Soft piano music filled the room. Images appeared one after another. Women sitting at kitchen tables studying late at night. A mother reading textbooks while her child slept beside her. A woman in a graduation cap crying as she hugged her daughter. Then another, and another. I felt my chest tighten. I knew every story. Some of those women had sat across from me trembling as they tried to explain why they wanted another chance. Because I never finished. Because I had to choose my family. Because I thought it was too late. It was never too late. That had become my quiet belief. Patricia spoke over the video. Second chances are not given. They are fought for. Her voice carried across the silent room. And tonight, we honor someone who has spent years helping others fight for theirs. I looked down at my hands again. Still folded. Still steady. But my heart was racing. The video ended. The lights brightened slightly. Patricia turned toward me. "Kelly," she said gently, "would you stand for a moment?" I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, because I didn't know how the room would respond. Then I stood. Slowly, carefully. The room reacted immediately. Applause. Not loud at first, then stronger, growing, spreading. I heard chairs shift as more people joined in. I glanced toward the audience. Some faces were familiar, smiling, nodding. Others were strangers, curious, respectful. And then I found Lauren. She wasn't clapping. Her hands rested still on the table. Her expression was frozen somewhere between disbelief and calculation. This wasn't part of her plan. This wasn't a donor she could approach. This wasn't a connection she could leverage. This was something else entirely, something she hadn't seen coming. Michael stood beside her. He was clapping, but his face looked pale, confused, searching, trying to understand how much he had missed. The applause slowly faded. Patricia lifted her hand slightly. Please, she said, remain standing for just a moment longer. I did, even though my knees felt weaker than usual. She continued. 2 years ago, Kelly approached this foundation with an idea. I closed my eyes briefly. I remembered that meeting clearly. The quiet conference room, the long discussion, the hesitation, the commitment. Patricia's voice remained steady. She wanted to create something more than a scholarship. She wanted to create a second chance for women who had been told their time had passed. A soft murmur moved through the audience. Interest? Attention? Understanding? She didn't want recognition. Patricia paused. She didn't even want her name attached to it. That was true. I had argued against it, more than once, but the board insisted. Patricia continued. Because some stories deserve to be told. I sat down slowly, my hands now resting lightly on my lap. Patricia turned slightly toward the screen again. Tonight, she said, we are proud to introduce the Stewart Second Chance Scholarship. The name echoed through the room. Stewart, not just Richard's, mine too. A new image appeared on the screen. A logo, simple, elegant. Underneath it, words, for women who refuse to give up. I swallowed hard. Patricia continued. This program will provide full tuition support for women over 40 returning to higher education. A ripple of surprise moved through the audience. Along with living assistance mentoring and career placement support, more murmurs, more attention, and the initial funding. She paused, long enough to let the room lean in. Exceeds $5 million. The reaction was immediate. Gasps, whispers, a sharp shift in the atmosphere. This was no longer just a touching story. It was something much larger, something real, something powerful. I didn't look at Lauren right away. I didn't need to. I could feel the change, the shift in energy, the recalculation. Finally, I turned my head. She was staring at me. Not with confusion anymore, with focus, intense, sharp, measuring, trying to understand how she had misjudged everything so completely. Michael's eyes met mine. He shook his head slightly, as if asking a silent question. Why didn't I know I held his gaze? Because you never asked. Patricia's voice continued. The funds were not simply inherited. Another pause. They were built. That mattered. I wanted people to understand that. This wasn't just Richard's legacy. It was mine too. For years, Patricia said, Kelly quietly managed and grew the Stewart family assets. The room reacted again, this time differently. Respect, recognition, surprise. While continuing to support this foundation without drawing attention to herself. I remembered those years. The late nights reviewing statements, the careful decisions, the slow growth. Richard had taught me enough to begin. But after he passed, I had to learn the rest on my own. I didn't do it to prove anything. I did it because I needed to survive. And somewhere along the way, I realized I could do more than survive. I could build something. Patricia turned fully toward me again. And tonight, we finally acknowledged the woman who made this possible. The room stood. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to fill the space with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Recognition. Not for being someone's mother, not for being someone's widow, but for being me. I stood again almost automatically. My eyes moved across the room. Faces, expressions, reactions. Then I saw Lauren again. This time she stood, slowly, reluctantly. Her hands came together in a quiet clap. But her eyes never left mine. And in that moment, I saw something I had never seen in her before. Not confidence, not charm, not control, uncertainty. For the first time since she entered my life, Lauren Stewart didn't know where she stood. And for the first time in years, I did. I remained standing for a few seconds after the applause faded. Not because anyone asked me to, because I needed a moment to breathe. $5 million. The number still felt unreal when spoken out loud. Not because I didn't understand it, because no one in that room, especially not Michael or Lauren, had ever imagined I controlled it. Patricia gestured gently. "You can sit, Kelly." I nodded and lowered myself back into the chair. My hands rested calmly in my lap, but inside, everything felt different now. Exposed. Irreversible. Patricia continued. "This scholarship is not just about funding education." Her voice carried clearly. "It is about restoring dignity." That word hit me harder than anything else that night. Dignity. The very thing Lauren had tried to take from me only minutes earlier. Patricia turned slightly toward the audience. "For women who have spent decades putting others first," a pause. "This program says something simple." Another pause. "You still matter." The silence that followed was heavier than applause. It wasn't polite. It wasn't social. It was personal. People were thinking, reflecting, recognizing something deeper than charity. I looked out across the room again. And this time, I saw something new. Not curiosity, respect. Not for my husband. For me. The program moved forward. Several of the first scholarship recipients were invited to stand, one by one. A woman in her 50s who had worked as a caregiver for 20 years, a single mother returning to finish a nursing degree, a widow who wanted to become a teacher. Their stories were brief, but powerful. Each one reminded me why I had started this, why I had continued, why I had chosen to give. Not because I had excess, because I understood what it meant to be overlooked, to be told your time had passed, to be quietly moved to the back of the room, just like Lauren had tried to do to me. I swallowed the thought. Tonight wasn't about her, but she was still there, and she was watching. After the presentations ended, dinner service began. The formal part of the program paused, allowing guests to talk, move, and reconnect. Patricia leaned toward me. "You did beautifully. I didn't say anything. You didn't need to." She smiled. "Sometimes presence speaks louder than words." I nodded, but my attention shifted. Across the room. Lauren was already moving. Of course she was. She approached another guest, a man I recognized as a venture investor. Her posture had changed. Softer. More calculated. I could almost see the conversation forming before she spoke. She wasn't shocked anymore. She was adapting. That was Lauren's strength. Michael followed her again, though more slowly this time. He kept looking back at me, as if he wanted to come over, but didn't know how, or didn't know if he should. A few minutes later he did. He approached carefully, almost like a child again. "Mom," I looked up at him. "Yes." He hesitated. "I didn't know." I held his gaze. "I know. How long enough?" He shook his head slightly. "You should have told me." I almost smiled. "You never asked." He opened his mouth, closed it again. That truth was harder for him to accept than anything else. Lauren joined him a moment later. Her expression had returned to something controlled. Not warm, not hostile, strategic. "Kelly," she said, "congratulations." Her tone was polished, almost perfect. But I could hear the difference now. She wasn't speaking to me as someone beneath her. She was speaking to someone she needed to understand. "Thank you," I replied. She glanced briefly at Patricia, then back at me. "This is impressive." I nodded. "It took time. I imagine it did." Another pause. Then she asked the question I had been expecting. "So you've been managing the family assets yourself?" There it was. Not concern, not admiration. Information. Yes. And Michael didn't know I looked at my son. He didn't ask. Lauren smiled slightly. That seems to be a pattern tonight. Her words were light, but pointed. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Lauren continued. And the trust I met her eyes. Yes, you control it. The room seemed to quiet again, at least in my awareness. This wasn't just curiosity. This was calculation. Yes, I said calmly. I do. Her expression didn't change, but something behind it sharpened. And Michael, he will receive what I decide to leave him. That was the truth. Simple, direct, unavoidable. Lauren's smile thinned. I see. No, she didn't. Not fully. But she was beginning to. Michael spoke again, his voice softer. Mom, why didn't you tell me about the scholarship? I looked at him. Because it wasn't about you. He flinched slightly. Not from cruelty. From realization. Lauren stepped in again. It affects him. Does it? I asked. Yes. How she paused, then answered carefully. Financially, there it was. Clear, honest. Finally. I nodded. Then perhaps it's time you both understand something. They both watched me now. Focused. Listening. The money I chose to give away, I paused. Was mine to give. Lauren's jaw tightened. Michael stayed silent. And what remains, I continued, is still mine. The space between us shifted. No raised voices, no dramatic gestures, just clarity. The kind that can't be softened. Lauren tried to recover. Of course, I didn't mean I know exactly what you meant. I kept my tone calm. That made it stronger. She held my gaze for a moment longer, then nodded. Well, she said, stepping back slightly, this is a wonderful program. Thank you. We should talk more later. We might. She smiled again, but this time it didn't reach her eyes. She turned and walked away. Michael remained. He looked at me differently now. Not as someone to manage, not as someone to protect, as someone he didn't fully know. I'm proud of you, he said quietly. I studied his face. For the first time that night, I believed he meant it. Thank you, I replied, but pride wasn't enough. Not anymore. The program resumed shortly afterward. Speeches, introductions, plans for expansion. But the real shift had already happened. Not on stage, at our table. Lauren no longer saw me as irrelevant. Michael no longer saw me as predictable. And I no longer saw either of them the same way. Because once the truth is revealed, it doesn't disappear when the applause ends. Dinner continued, but nothing felt the same anymore. Not for me, and certainly not for Lauren. The room had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way you could feel if you paid attention. Before the presentation, Lauren had moved through the crowd like she belonged to every conversation. Now people approached me. Mrs. Stewart, that was incredible. Your work is inspiring. I had no idea you were behind this. I smiled. I thanked them. But I also noticed something else. Lauren was no longer leading conversations. She was trying to re-enter them. That difference mattered. Across the room, I saw her laughing again. But it wasn't the same laugh. It came a fraction too late, a fraction too sharp. She was adjusting, repositioning, trying to recover ground she didn't even realize she had lost until tonight. Michael stayed close to her at first. Then gradually, he didn't. He drifted. Toward me, toward the stage, toward something he hadn't understood before. About 30 minutes later, I stepped away from the main table. I needed air. Not because I was overwhelmed, because I needed space to think. The hallway outside the ballroom was quiet. Soft lighting, muted carpet. A place where the noise of the evening faded into something manageable. I leaned lightly against the wall, closed my eyes, just for a moment. Kelly. I opened them. Lauren stood a few feet away, alone. Her posture was different now. Not relaxed, not entirely composed. Careful. "We should talk," she said. I nodded slightly. "All right." She stepped closer. Not too close, but close enough to lower her voice. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." I almost smiled. About intentions? I waited. She continued. "I didn't know the extent of your involvement. That much is clear." Her jaw tightened slightly. "I didn't mean to offend you earlier." Earlier? She meant the seat, the words, the dismissal. "You moved my things?" I said calmly. "It was a mistake." "No," I replied. "It was a decision." Silence. Lauren studied my face, as if searching for weakness, or forgiveness, or both. "I was trying to position us well," she said finally. "Us, yes. Michael and I." "For what?" She hesitated, then answered honestly. "Opportunities." There it was again. The word that defined her. Opportunities. I nodded slowly, and I was in the way. "That's not what I meant. It's what you did." Lauren looked away briefly, then back at me. "You have to understand how things work." "I do." "No, you don't." Her tone sharpened. "In my world, positioning matters. Respect matters too." She exhaled sharply. "This isn't about respect?" "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." We stood there in silence for a few seconds. Then she shifted the conversation. "Strategic, as always. The trust," she said. I looked at her. "What about it? How is it structured?" That question again. "Not emotional, not relational. Financial. Precise." "Why do you want to know?" I asked. "Because it affects my husband." I held her gaze. "It affects what I decide to do with my assets." She crossed her arms. "You're saying Michael has no guaranteed position. I'm saying nothing is guaranteed." Her expression hardened. "That's not how inheritance works. It is in this case." She shook her head slightly. "That's unusual." "No," I said. "It's intentional." Lauren studied me more carefully now. "You're serious." "I always am." She stepped closer, lowered her voice further. "You gave away $5 million. Yes, and you still control the rest?" "Yes." She stared at me, trying to calculate, trying to understand the numbers, the implications, the limits. "How much is left?" she asked. There it was. Direct, unfiltered. Honest in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. "That's not information you need," I replied. "It is if I'm part of this family." I almost laughed. "You're part of this family by marriage." Her eyes flashed. "And you're saying that doesn't matter? I'm saying it doesn't entitle you to anything." The silence that followed was heavy, not uncertain, defined. Lauren's voice changed again. Colder now. "You've been hiding this?" "I've been managing it. Without telling Michael. Without being asked." She took a step back. "You made him look foolish tonight." I held her gaze. "No." I revealed something he never cared to see. Her lips pressed together. "You could have handled this differently. So could you." Another pause. Then she said something that surprised me. I needed that seat. I looked at her. Why? Because people notice who sits in the front. I nodded. And what would they have seen? Her answer came instantly. Status. And what did they see instead? She didn't respond. Because she knew the answer. They saw truth. And truth doesn't need positioning. Lauren looked away. For the first time since I had known her. Not because she lost control. Because she ran out of arguments. I didn't realize she began. Then stopped. Didn't finish. I waited, but she didn't continue. Finally, she straightened her shoulders, rebuilt her posture. Well, talk later, she said. I nodded. Maybe. She turned and walked back toward the ballroom. Her steps were steady, but not as confident as before. Not as certain. I remained in the hallway for a few moments longer. Then I heard another voice. Mom, Michael. He stood where Lauren had been, looking at me like he didn't quite recognize the person in front of him. I didn't know any of this, he said again. I believe you. Why didn't you tell me? I sighed softly, because I didn't want my choices to be influenced by expectations. He frowned. What does that mean? It means I didn't want your anyone to see me differently because of money. He looked down, then back at me. I don't see you differently. I studied his face. You do. He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. Mom, he said quietly. Did Lauren know anything? No. And now she knows enough. He nodded slowly, then asked the question that mattered most. Where do I stand? I didn't answer immediately, because the truth deserved more than a quick response. You stand, I said finally, where you've always stood. He waited, confused. And where is that? I met his eyes? On your own. The meaning settled between us. Clear, unavoidable. For the first time that night, Michael didn't look confused. He looked concerned, because he was beginning to understand something neither he nor Lauren had ever considered. Nothing was guaranteed. Not the seat. Not the money. Not even the place they thought they had in my life. And that realization was only the beginning. The rest of the evening moved forward, but the conversation in that hallway stayed with me, especially Lauren's question. How much is left? Not how did you build it, not why did you give it, only what remained, only what could still be taken. I returned to the ballroom slowly. Dinner plates were being cleared. Dessert was being served. The music had softened, but the tension beneath everything had not. Michael was waiting when I reached the table. Not sitting, standing, as if he had been rehearsing what to say. Mom, he said, can we talk? I nodded. We moved to a quieter corner near the windows. City lights stretched beyond the glass. Chicago at night. Beautiful. Distant. Almost unreal compared to the conversation we were about to have. Michael exhaled slowly. There's something I need to tell you? I said nothing. He looked down, then back at me. Lauren and we've been having some financial pressure. That didn't surprise me. What kind of pressure? I asked. He hesitated. Her business? Yes, she invested in a development project. I waited. It didn't go the way she expected. How bad is it? He rubbed his forehead. Worse than she told me. I studied his face. There was no arrogance there now. No defensiveness. Just worry. How much? I asked quietly. He swallowed. A few $100,000. The number landed heavily. Not catastrophic, but serious. Especially if handled poorly. And she didn't tell you everything I asked. Not at first. And now I'm starting to see the full picture. I nodded slowly. Does this have anything to do with the trust? His eyes widened. What do you mean? I said calmly. Has Lauren used your name in connection with it? He shook his head immediately. No, of course not. I didn't respond. Because I had already learned something about certainty. People use it when they want to believe something is true. Not when they know it is. Michael noticed my silence. Why would you ask that? He said. Because I was contacted 2 weeks ago. His expression froze. By who? A financial advisor. What for? They received a proposal. He stared at me. A proposal for what? A loan. His voice dropped. A loan. Yes. Using what I held his gaze. Future assets. The color drained from his face. Mom. The Stewart Trust was mentioned, I continued. His lips parted slightly. That's not possible. Isn't it? I never signed anything? That's what I need to understand. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Michael stepped back slightly, as if distance could help him think. She told me we were restructuring some investments, he said slowly. What kind of restructuring? Refinancing, maybe repositioning. His voice faltered. You don't know, I said. No. That word came out weaker than anything he had said all night. Did you sign documents? I asked. He hesitated, then nodded once. Yes. My chest tightened. What kind of documents? I didn't read all of them carefully. That hurt more than anything else. Not the money, not the risk, the carelessness, the trust placed in the wrong person. You signed without reading? I asked. He closed his eyes briefly. I trusted her. I took a slow breath. So did I. He looked at me again. What are you saying? Saying I have a copy. A copy of what? The document. His face went completely still, and he whispered, and your signature is on it. That doesn't mean it guarantees something. He swallowed hard. What? That if the loan fails? I paused. The lender expects access to future assets tied to your name? Michael stared at me. You're saying she used the trust saying she tried to imply it would be available? That's not legal. No, I said quietly. It isn't. He ran his hand through his hair. This doesn't make sense. It does, I replied. From her perspective? He shook his head. No, she wouldn't do that. I said nothing, because denial needed silence, not argument. Michael paced a few steps, then turned back. I need to talk to her. Yes, I need to understand exactly what she did. Yes. He looked at me again. You didn't confront her earlier? I wanted to hear what you knew first. And now it's your turn. He nodded slowly, then stopped. Mom. Yes. If this is true, he couldn't finish the sentence, because he already understood the consequences. It will be handled properly, I said. He stared at me. Legally, if necessary. His shoulders dropped slightly. God, the word barely came out. I didn't know. I believe you. That doesn't change anything, does it? No, I said gently. It doesn't. That was the hardest part. Intent doesn't erase impact. Michael leaned against the window, looking out at the city. I thought we were building something, he said. Maybe you were, I replied. Just not the same thing she was. He closed his eyes. I need to ask her directly. Yes, and if she... He stopped again. Couldn't say it. If she did what you think I said, then you'll have to decide what matters more. He nodded slowly, then asked the question he had been avoiding. Do you think she would do that? I met his eyes. Yes. No hesitation. No softness. Just truth. He exhaled sharply, then straightened. I'm going to find her. I watched him walk away, not following her, not being pulled, walking with purpose, for the first time that night. And as I stood there watching my son finally face something he had avoided for too long, I realized something else. Lauren hadn't just taken my seat. She had tried to take something far more valuable. And tonight, she was about to be confronted for it. I returned to the ballroom slowly after speaking with Michael. The energy in the room had shifted again. Not because of the speeches, because something else was unfolding beneath the surface. And I could feel it. Lauren stood near one of the side tables speaking to two men in suits. Her posture was still controlled, her smile still practiced. But her eyes were scanning the room, looking for Michael, looking for me, looking for control. Then she saw him. Michael walked straight toward her. No hesitation, no uncertainty. I stopped where I was, far enough not to interrupt, close enough to see everything. Lauren smiled as he approached. There you are, she said lightly. We should, Lauren, he interrupted. That alone was new. He never interrupted her. We need to talk. Her smile flickered, only for a second. Of course, she said. They stepped slightly aside. Not out of sight, just out of the center. Michael didn't lower his voice. Not enough. Did you use my name for a loan? The question cut clean through the noise of the room. Lauren froze. Just for a fraction of a second. Then she recovered. What you heard me. I don't know what you're talking about. Michael's voice tightened. Did you sign documents with my name on them? Her eyes shifted. Just briefly. That was enough. It was a standard agreement, she said. That's not an answer. I handled it. You signed for me, I had to. Michael stepped back. You had to? Yes. Why, because you wouldn't understand the process. The arrogance in that sentence was almost familiar, but tonight it sounded different. Clearer, sharper, unavoidable. Michael shook his head slowly. You forged my signature. Lauren's voice dropped. Don't use that word. Why not? Because it sounds worse than it is. It is worse. She exhaled sharply. You said you trusted me? I did, and I made a decision for us. No, he said. You made a decision for yourself. Silence. Lauren's composure cracked slightly. Not completely, but enough. You don't understand what was at stake, she said. Then explain it. The project needed backing. So you used my name, I used our future. Michael laughed once. Short, cold. That's not yours to use. Her tone sharpened. It's our marriage. It's not your right. It's our life. It's my name. Their voices were rising now, not shouting, but no longer controlled. People nearby were starting to notice. I stepped closer, not to intervene, to be present. Michael continued. Did you tell them I had access to the trust? Lauren hesitated. That hesitation said everything. Michael stared at her. You did. I implied it. You lied. I positioned us. That word again. Positioned. Like everything was a move, a calculation, a step towards something else. Michael's voice dropped. You used my mother. No. Yes. She has resources. She has boundaries. Lauren crossed her arms. She's holding them back. That was the moment. The line. The truth that could no longer be softened. Michael looked at her like he had never seen her before. She gave away $5 million tonight, Lauren continued. As if it meant nothing. It meant everything, Michael said quietly. To her. Lauren shook her head. To strangers. That's not the point. It is the point. No, he said. It's the difference. Lauren stared at him. You're choosing her side. Michael didn't hesitate. I'm choosing what's right. Silence. Heavy. Final. Lauren laughed softly. Now you care about right and wrong. Michael didn't react. You signed papers without reading them? She continued. You trusted me. I trusted my wife. And now, he met her eyes. Now I need to know who you are. That question landed harder than anything else. Lauren's expression hardened. I'm the person who tried to build something bigger. By lying, by doing what was necessary. Michael shook his head. That's not necessary. That's survival. No, he said. That's manipulation. The word hung in the air. Clear, unavoidable. Lauren looked around. People were watching now. Not everyone. But enough. Her voice lowered again. You're making a scene. No, Michael said. You already did that. Her eyes flashed. For you, for us, for the future. Michael's answer came without hesitation. There is no future built like this. Silence again. Lauren's posture shifted. Defensive now, not strategic. You're overreacting. No, you always do this. No, you let people control you. I did. That word stopped her. Past tense. Michael took a step forward. But not anymore. Lauren stared at him. You're serious? Yes. And what are you going to do? Michael didn't answer immediately. Because the answer mattered. Because it would define everything after this moment. I'm going to fix what I can, he said. And the rest, I'll face it. Lauren shook her head. You can't. I can. You don't even understand what you're dealing with? I understand enough. And what a... Michael's voice softened slightly. But not enough to change his meaning. We'll talk about that later. Lauren stepped back. That was new. She had never stepped back before. Not from him. Not from anyone. You're choosing her, she said again. Michael shook his head. I am choosing truth. That was the moment everything changed. Not because of the argument. Because of the clarity. Lauren looked at him. Then at me. For the first time, there was no calculation left. No strategy. Just anger. And something else. Fear. Because she realized something she hadn't expected. Control doesn't last forever. Not when the truth finally arrives. She turned sharply. Fine, she said. Handle it your way. And then she walked away. Not gracefully, not slowly, fast, direct, like someone trying to leave before everything collapsed. Michael stood still, watching her go. Then he turned back to me. For a moment, neither of us spoke, because there was nothing left to hide, nothing left to pretend, only consequences, and the choices that would follow them. Lauren didn't get far. She had barely reached the edge of the ballroom when Patricia stepped in front of her. Not aggressively, not dramatically, just decisively. Lauren Patricia said calmly. Lauren stopped. Her shoulders stiffened. I need a moment of your time, Patricia continued. Lauren forced a small smile. I was just stepping out. I understand, Patricia said. This will only take a minute. There was something in Patricia's tone that made it clear it wasn't a request. Lauren glanced around. People were watching again. Not openly, but enough. She nodded. Fine. They stepped aside near the entrance. Close enough that I could see. Far enough that I couldn't hear every word. But I didn't need to. I knew what was coming. Patricia spoke first. Measured. Professional. Lauren listened. At first, she looked composed. Then her expression changed. Slightly, then more. Her posture shifted. Defensive. Her arms crossed. She responded quickly. Too quickly. Patricia didn't react. She simply continued. Calm, firm, certain. That contrast alone told me everything. Lauren tried to interrupt. Patricia raised her hand slightly, not to silence her. To hold the space. Lauren stopped speaking. For the first time since I had known her, someone else controlled the conversation. A few moments later, David Coleman approached. My financial advisor. He nodded politely to Patricia, then looked directly at Lauren. That was when her composure cracked. Not fully, but enough. She stepped back. Just a half step, but it mattered. David spoke. Short, direct. No wasted words. Lauren's eyes widened. Just slightly, then narrowed again. She tried to recover, to respond, to push back. But this wasn't a social conversation. This wasn't networking. This wasn't positioning. This was fact. And fact doesn't bend. Patricia turned toward the entrance. 2 hotel security staff were already nearby. Not aggressive, not intrusive, just present. Lauren saw them, and in that moment, everything changed. She looked back at Michael, then at me, then at Patricia. You're serious? She asked. Patricia's answer was simple. Yes. Lauren laughed. Once, sharp, disbelieving. This is unnecessary. No, Patricia said. It isn't. Lauren shook her head. You're overreacting. No, David replied. You are. That hit. Lauren's eyes flashed. You have no authority here. David didn't raise his voice. I have enough. Silence. The kind that settles when there are no more arguments left to use. Lauren looked around again. The room, the people, the situation. For the first time, she realized she wasn't controlling it. She straightened her shoulders. Tried one last time. Michael, she said. Her voice softer now. Controlled again. Tell them this is a misunderstanding. Michael didn't move. Didn't speak. That was her answer. Lauren stared at him. You're just going to stand there? He met her eyes. Yes. The word was quiet, but it ended everything. Lauren's expression hardened completely. No more softness, no more charm, no more pretense. Fine, she said, her voice cold now. If that's how this is going to be handled? She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Patricia stepped slightly to the side. Please, she said, gesturing toward the exit. Lauren didn't move immediately. She looked at me one last time, long, direct, unblinking. There was anger there, yes, but also something else. Recognition. She finally understood. She hadn't just misjudged a situation. She had misjudged me. Completely. Then she turned and walked, not escorted, not forced, but no longer welcome. The doors closed behind her. And just like that, the tension shifted again. The room didn't erupt. There was no dramatic reaction, just a quiet understanding that something significant had happened. Patricia returned to me. Are you all right? She asked. Yes, I meant it, more than I expected. Michael stepped closer. He looked different, not relieved, not proud, heavy. "I'm sorry," he said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. "I know," I replied. "I should have seen it. Yes. I should have listened to you. Yes." He nodded slowly, accepting, not arguing. That mattered. "I didn't think she would go that far," he said. "I did." He looked at me. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I considered the question, then answered honestly. "Because you wouldn't have believed me." He didn't argue, because he knew it was true. "I didn't want to believe anything was wrong," he admitted. "That doesn't make it less wrong." "No." We stood in silence for a moment. Not uncomfortable, just real. The kind of silence that comes when everything unnecessary has been stripped away. Finally, Michael spoke again. "What happens now?" Now, I looked at him. At what level? All of it. His life, his marriage, his choices, the consequences. "Now," I said, "you start telling the truth." He nodded. "And after that, you take responsibility for what you knew, and what I didn't. You learn from it." He exhaled slowly. "That sounds simple. It isn't." "No, but it's necessary." Michael looked toward the doors Lauren had exited. "She's not coming back, is she?" "No." He nodded, as if something inside him had already accepted that. "Do you think she'll fix it?" he asked. "I think she'll try to fix herself." "That's not the same thing." "No." Another pause. Then he asked the question that mattered most. "Do you think I can fix this?" I didn't answer immediately, because the truth deserved time. "It depends," I said finally. "On what?" "On whether you're willing to see things clearly." He held my gaze. "I am." I studied his face. Not the boy I had raised, not the man he thought he was, but something in between, something unfinished. "You have a chance," I said. "That's more than most people get." He nodded. "I won't waste it." I believed him. Not completely, not yet, but enough, because tonight, for the first time in a long time, my son had chosen truth over comfort. And that choice changes everything. The gala ended quietly, not abruptly, not awkwardly, just differently than it began. People lingered longer than usual. Conversations felt more real, less polished, less performative, as if something honest had broken through the usual surface. I stayed near the front for a while, speaking with a few board members and donors. Not because I needed to, because I wanted to. That was new. For years, I had attended, supported, then slipped quietly into the background. Tonight, I didn't. Patricia approached me one last time before leaving. "You changed the room tonight," she said. I shook my head. "No." "Yes," she insisted gently. "Not with the money. With the truth." I smiled. I think people were ready to hear it. Maybe, she said, but someone still had to say it. We hugged briefly. Then she left. The room slowly emptied. Chairs pushed back. Glasses cleared. Staff moved efficiently, restoring order. I watched it all from my seat. My seat. Not because it was reserved, because I chose to sit there. That distinction mattered now. Michael returned to me as the last guests were leaving. His jacket was off, his tie loosened. He looked tired, not physically, emotionally. "Are you ready to go?" he asked. "Yes." We walked out together, for the first time that evening, not ahead, not behind, side by side. The night air was cool, quiet. The city felt calmer than it had hours earlier. We stood near the valet area, Neither of us spoke immediately. Finally, Michael broke the silence. She's not answering my calls. I nodded. She won't. She left. Yes. He looked down. I don't know where she went. She knows where she's going. That answer didn't comfort him. It wasn't meant to. He ran a hand through his hair. This is worse than I thought. Yes. I feel like I missed everything. You ignored things. That was the truth. He didn't argue. I kept telling myself it wasn't serious, he admitted. I kept choosing the easier explanation. That's what most people do. But it doesn't make it right. No. We stood in silence again. Then he said something that surprised me. I signed the paper without reading it because I trusted her. I waited, but I also didn't want to question her. Why? Because every time I did, he hesitated. She made it feel like I was the problem. I nodded slowly. That's how control works. He looked at me. You saw it. Yes. Why didn't I? Because you loved her. He exhaled. That shouldn't make you blind. No, but it often does. He leaned against the car beside us. I thought marriage meant supporting each other. It does, but not blindly. He nodded. I understand that now. I studied him carefully, not judging, not forgiving, observing. Because understanding is only the first step. What are you going to do? I asked. He looked at me directly. I'm going to tell the truth. I smiled slightly. You already said that. I mean it this time. And after that, I'm going to fix what I can, and what you can't. He paused. I'll take responsibility for it. That was different. Not defensive, not reactive. Intentional. I believe you, I said. He nodded, then asked the question I knew was coming. Do you think I can come back from this? I didn't answer immediately. Because the answer mattered. Not the way you were before, I said. He frowned slightly. Then how better? He looked confused. Better how more aware, more honest, more responsible. He let that settle. That sounds harder. It is. But it's worth more. He nodded slowly, then asked something softer. Are you angry with me? I considered the question. I was, I said. And now, I'm disappointed. He swallowed. That's worse. Yes. Another pause. Then he said, Can I fix that? Yes. How by not asking me that again? He looked at me. Understanding. You want me to show it? Yes. He nodded. I will. A valet approached with my car. Michael opened the door for me. I paused before getting in. Michael? Yes. You don't need to prove anything tonight. I know. You need to start proving it tomorrow. He nodded again. I will. I got into the car. But before closing the door, I looked at him one more time. Do you know why that seat mattered so much? I asked. He smiled slightly. Because Dad chose it for you. Yes. And because it meant something. It did. I met his eyes. But tonight, I paused. It meant something different. He waited. It reminded me that I don't need anyone else to decide where I belong. He nodded slowly. I understand. I believed he was beginning to. I closed the door. As the car pulled away, I looked back once. Michael was still standing there, watching, not lost, not broken, but changed. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something worth rebuilding. 1 year later, I walked into the ballroom again. Same hotel, same event, same soft lighting, but everything felt different. Not because the room had changed, because I had. I paused just inside the entrance for a moment, not out of hesitation, out of awareness. Last year, I had walked in carrying memories, pain, doubt, and a quiet hope that things would somehow fix themselves. This year, I walked in with clarity and peace. Mrs. Stewart. I turned. Emily Harper approached with a warm smile. It's good to see you again. It's good to be here. You look wonderful. Thank you. She leaned closer. Everything is ready. I smiled. I trust that it is. She nodded. We kept your seat. Of course they did. But this time, that wasn't what mattered most. I stepped into the ballroom. Guests were already seated. Conversations flowed easily. Laughter, connection, purpose. I looked toward the front row. There it was. My seat, aisle, left side, exactly the same. But I didn't walk to it immediately, because someone was already standing beside it. Michael. He turned the moment he saw me. His expression softened, not dramatically, just honestly. Hi, Mom. Hello, Michael. He didn't sit. He didn't move. He simply stepped slightly to the side. Waiting. For you, he said. That small gesture meant more than anything he could have said a year ago. I nodded. Thank you. I sat. He waited until I was settled before taking the seat beside me. Not ahead, not assuming, beside. That difference mattered. He looked different, not just in appearance, in presence. Simpler suit, no unnecessary details, no performance, just himself. How have you been? I asked. Better, he said. I can see that. He smiled slightly. I've been volunteering more with the foundation. I know. You do? Yes. I didn't want to make it a big thing. You didn't? That was true. I had heard about it from Patricia, not from him. That mattered too. What kind of work? I asked. He laughed softly. Mostly unglamorous things. Like setting up chairs, carrying boxes, filing paperwork. I smiled. Important things. They are, he said. I didn't realize that before. No, I replied. You didn't. He didn't argue. That was another change. And the rest? I asked. The legal side, the debts. He nodded. I'm still working through it. With help? Yes. And responsibility? Yes. I studied him for a moment, not looking for perfection, looking for consistency. Am proud of the effort, I said. Thank you. That word felt different now. Not automatic. Earned. The program began shortly afterward. Speeches, stories, new recipients. Everything flowed with purpose. At one point, a woman in her late 50s stepped onto the stage. She held the microphone with both hands. Her voice trembled slightly. I never thought I would be back in school, she said. I thought that part of my life was over. She paused, then smiled, but someone believed it wasn't. She looked toward me. Thank you for that. I felt the familiar tightness in my chest. Not pain, emotion. The kind that comes when something you built reaches someone you never expected to meet. Michael glanced at me. That's because of you, he said quietly. I shook my head. That's because of her. He nodded, understanding the difference. After the program ended, people approached again. But this time, it felt lighter. Not overwhelming, not exposing, just right. Later, as the room began to settle, Michael spoke again. I've been thinking about something. Yes, the trust. I listened. I don't expect anything anymore. That wasn't what I expected him to say. I mean it, he continued. I signed a document months ago. I know, You do? Yes. I wanted you to know I wasn't doing it for you. I know. I did it because I needed to separate who I am from what I thought I would inherit. That mattered. More than any promise. More than any apology. That's a good place to start, I said. He nodded. I don't know what the future looks like. You don't need to, but I want to earn whatever place I have in it. I looked at him carefully. Then earn it. I will. I believed him. Not blindly, but steadily. Because over the past year he had shown it. Not with words, with actions. I leaned back slightly in my seat. My seat. Not because someone saved it for me. Because I chose it. Because I belonged there. Not for status. Not for visibility. For meaning. I glanced at Michael. He was watching the stage. Attentive. Present. Not distracted. Not performing. Just there. Beside me. That was enough. More than enough. I thought about Richard. About everything we had built. Everything we had hoped for. He used to say something simple. Character is revealed when no one is watching. Tonight, people were watching. But that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was what happened when they weren't. Michael turned to me one last time. Mom. Yes, thank you for not giving up on me. I held his gaze. I didn't give up on you. I just stopped protecting you from your choices. He nodded slowly. That made all the difference. Yes, I said softly. It usually does. I looked back toward the stage. Another woman was stepping forward. Another story beginning. Another second chance. And as I sat there in the seat that once represented memory, then pain, then truth, I realized something simple. It was never about the seat. It was about knowing my worth and refusing to let anyone else define it. After everything that happened, I've had time to reflect on that night and what it really meant. There's something I want to share with you, especially if you've ever felt overlooked, dismissed, or quietly pushed aside. Getting older does not make you invisible. It does not reduce your value. And it certainly does not mean your voice matters less. For a long time, I thought being a good mother meant stepping back, staying quiet, and keeping the peace no matter the cost. I believed love meant sacrifice without limits. But I learned something important. Love without boundaries becomes permission. Permission for others to take, to dismiss, to decide your worth for you. And that is not love. That is loss. What happened that night wasn't just about a seat. It was about dignity. It was about the moment I realized that no one, not even my own family, gets to decide where I belong. We teach people how to treat us. Sometimes, not by what we say, but by what we allow. And I had allowed too much for too long. But here's the part that matters most. Forgiveness is not the same as forgetting, and it is not the same as restoring everything back to the way it was. Forgiveness can exist alongside consequences. It can exist alongside distance, and it can exist while someone is still earning their way back into your trust. My son didn't get everything back overnight. He had to show change, real change. Not words, not promises, actions, consistency, time. And even now, that journey isn't finished. Because trust is not given, it is rebuilt, one decision at a time. If you've ever been treated like you matter less because of your age, because of your role, because of what others think you should be, I want you to remember this. Your life experience is not something to hide. It is something to stand on. You are not past your time. You are living proof of everything you've survived, and that is power. So now, I want to hear from you. Would you have forgiven Michael if you were in my place? Do you think I made the right decision about the trust and the inheritance? And have you ever experienced a moment where someone tried to make you feel like you didn't belong anymore? Tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe, because there are so many more stories like this, stories about strength, truth, and finding your voice again. Wherever you're watching from, and whatever time it is for you right